Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We're going to jump right in. I mean, logistics is a family industry. It's an industry that, you know, not everybody comes into it like me, where it's like I kind of grew up in it. Some people come into it as a second career. And, you know, and this guy today, I mean, that we've literally only met a couple of times here. We've talked. We're going to have a really good conversation about him building up his career in freight here. So I got Mr. Blair Charbonneau on the show this morning. Blair, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
No, I'm looking forward to it, man. Like, I mean, and especially like, I love your story about getting out there and, you know, you were working in an entirely different field, and, you know, making career changes is a very big deal, especially, you know, the older we get, and let alone, you know, making job changes is a big deal for a lot of individuals. So for you to kind of get up and change it. So, dude, let's just kind of jump right in, man. Blair, how did you get your start in freight? What brought you into logistics?
Well, my start in freight, you know, I'm everyone's got their story about it, right? But my mom's been in the freight business for about almost 20 years now. Blair Charbonneau. She started doing it when I first graduated high school and left home, right? I was her baby. She didn't have anything really going on, and she wanted to just move into something that would occupy her time. And freight was, you know, that was the job she ended up in. And, you know, my course of it, I graduated, I went into trade school, got a good job in HVAC refrigeration. And I was in that industry for just about probably about 16 years almost. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a good job, good industry. You know, you come out of high school and you start making money right away. And over time, you know, I kind of got to the top of the ladder of where I needed to be. And, you know, to move up in my position where I was at, you know, there was a lot of guys that were younger, you know, not younger than me, but were still young.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for someone to retire. I'd kind of reached the peak in that industry. And I started, you know, thinking about, hey, well, you know, maybe I should start talking to my mom and see if, you know, this is a business that might be right for me as well. The reason I started thinking about that too was, you know, she had always just talked about how busy she was, right? She's been running her business. She's got one other guy working for her, Tynan.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was just always so busy, you know, never had time to go on vacation, anything like that. So, you know, part of it for me was like, hey, you know, maybe I can come in and help take some of this workload away. Mm-hmm. And I kind of started bugging her about 4 or 5 years ago, you know, asking her about the business, what it was like. I would see what she was doing in the office every now and then. And that's kind of what started my, you know, transition into it. Over the last couple of years, you know, getting an inside look at it, I was, you know, thinking, I think this might be something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And I recently had my second child, little baby boy. He's a year and a half now. And when we had him, I was on, I took a paternity leave from work for 6 weeks. And the plan was, hey, I'm going to come and work with my mom for 6 weeks and see
Yeah.
if it's something that I want to do. And after that 6 weeks, I left my current position. And that was just over a year ago now. I've been doing freight.
So what was that like? Because it's, I don't know if enough people can really comprehend. I was just talking to a really good buddy of mine last night about this as well, because, like selling in this industry pre-COVID is vastly different than selling in this industry like over the last couple of years in particular, right? Because I feel like there was an overinflated sense of how easy this job was in 2020, 21, and 22. And it's I see it out there now. So it's like I know it because I've been around here for a while. I'd like to get your kind of opinion on this, man. Like when you're going out there, because you've only known this market. And I've developed my book of business in this market. You're out there doing it as well. But like what are your initial thoughts with that stuff, man? Like as you're going in there, you're building it up. It's a down market overall. Opportunities are newer opportunities with new customers are kind of few and far between for the most part out there right now. So how are you navigating through that? Or do you feel like it's a great opportunity to start in this market because it can really only go up?
Yeah, that's kind of my overview of this market, right? Is just that it seems like it's only can go up from here, right? I've it's not firsthand experience, but I've heard, from people that have been in this industry for a long time that it's been tough out here for a few years. And my transition into this business right away, my first instinct was like, okay, I got to get as many customers as I can. I need to make sure, I'm able to provide enough for my family, whatever it is, I'm going to do what it takes. Right. So, starting out cold calling, just nonstop cold calls, getting rejected. And it was tough to feel that rejection in the beginning. It's like, it really makes you think like, oh, am I a bad person? What am I doing wrong? Right.
I want to talk about that for a little bit, Blair, because I feel like everybody goes through that, and it's something that I mean, dude, I struggle with that too, right? Because just like you, this is how I support my family ultimately, right? Like I don't have a golden nest out there to bail me out. Like I eat what I kill.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that now for, going on 5 years. So it's like, it's a different level to me of emotion, I think personally, as you're going out there and doing it, when you don't have a direct deposit guaranteed coming in every 2 weeks from a salary or anything like that. And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles. And I feel like that's what causes the most anxiety about going out there and dialing is it's like there's so much rejection that you start to question, like, is this even worth it? Right? Is anybody even going to work with me? Am I just the worst human being on earth?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? We were talking about golf before we jumped on here. I can, compare it to that. I'm not the best golfer, but, I'll have 16 terrible holes and I'll make one good shot. And that brings me back to the game, right?
Yeah.
It's like all that rejection. You make one call and someone's like, you know what? Yeah, I've got a load for you to work on, let me know what you can do here. And that totally just changes my mentality about it. Right. So yeah, like that was kind of my start into it. Like, okay, I got to get as many customers as I can. Didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but what I started to do at that time as well was, and you know what, I'm going to reach out to my personal contacts. Just talk to the guys that I know that they've also built their own business. Do you know anyone in this industry? I'm into shipping now. Can you put me in contact with anyone? And that was really where the brunt of my business came from was word of mouth. These guys, put me in touch. Hey, I've got a good friend of mine. He's doing freight. Let me put you in touch, right? Have a conversation. And that's kind of where stuff started rolling for me.
I don't think enough people network at the level that they should and realize that, Again, like as Clark Wellman says here, cold calling ain't dead. You got to do it every day. And I agree with that, right? Like, especially when it comes down to transportation, I truly feel like cold calling will always be the most effective way to develop business. But one thing that I've learned over these last couple of years, especially, is the power of networking, right? Like, I never did it leading up to probably within the last 3 to 4 years is when I actually started networking, and I actually started taking that approach that you're talking about right there, Blair, of, hey, this is what I do. Like, everybody should know what you do, no matter what. Friends, like I have an office that I rent out here in Arizona, and I've just like started going around. I've been talking to everybody inside of here as well here as of late, just like, hey, here's who I am. This is what I do. What do you do? Right. It's about how do we help each other build each other's businesses up. And, there's a really good book out there called The Power of One More by Ed Milet. And it is like, man, you are, and he says it in this book where it's like, you are literally one conversation away from changing your life. And that's like the mentality that I try my best to adopt every single time that I'm going out there and talking with somebody, where it's like, hey, this could be it. That one more dial, that one more sales email, whatever that is, especially to get it off the ground and get it up and running, right? Because like, you found success inside of your network. And I just think like most people, if you don't have a network, right? Because that's always like, I'll deduce it down to this. Maybe you don't have a network, right? Maybe you are the one person in today's day and age that has never met another human being in your life and you don't know where to start. Go to the grocery store, just strike up a conversation with somebody. It's amazing, especially right now during football season, right? Like somebody's always got a jersey on or a hat on of another team. Just go up there and talk to them about that. Start getting that conversation going just to get the flow of just talking to people, because no one's just going to like really punch you in the face. I mean, unless you live in New York City, when strangers do that shit all the time. But like people are craving for quality conversations. And I think in human nature, especially as we continue, all this automation and digitization gets pushed out there, I think that's going to open up a major opportunity for people who just want that human to human interaction.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, to kind of touch on my journey into this a little bit more. So, like I said, I'm a sub agent under my mom, right? And she, I mentioned she was just working herself to the bone, her and her team, Ty, just nonstop. They didn't have time for, like I said, vacation. It was just work, go, 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 go. And myself coming in here, again, that was kind of part of the vision that I had was, okay, let me take some of this load for you. And it's now turned into, deep selling some of her current customers that she's had for the last 15, 12 years. I started doing, when I first came into this, I had a cousin that was, he's got a solar company here, and he was importing solar panels out of Vietnam. So I figured out how to do ocean freight. And then from that, some of these customers my mom's had for years, they're like, hey, we've got some stuff overseas that we need to get here. And it was like, well, Blair just figured out how to do that. I'll let him work this for you, right? So now we're doing some deep selling.
Dude, I'm right there with you, Blair. And because that's one of those things that opportunity kind of fell into our lap as well with an existing customer of ours. They're like, hey, we have a bunch of containers on water. We need help with this. What can you do? And I'm just like, I just have that I will figure it out mentality, right? And, the beauty of having this show as long as I've had, I was able to call actually former guests on the show who do drayage work, right? And I called them, and they actually turned in to be one of our biggest carriers that we've worked with out there. But, we started to do that exact same thing now, where it's like we're just very hyper-focused and targeted in our outreach when we're talking to people, right? Like, I feel like and I'd like to get your opinion on this, man. I've noticed this now as of recent, when I go in there and talk about the specialization of what it is that we do, whether it's, full truckload in the open deck space or drayage, it's a infinitely better conversation than me just going in and saying, hey, I'm a broker. I want to talk to you about your freight. What's the feedback that you have on that?
Well, again, just starting out new, I'm the same as you, like, just, I'm, whatever it is, I'm going to try to figure it out. So, my approach to that is, hey, what are the hard points? Where are you guys struggling with right now? I was out I was dropping off some gift baskets for some of my current customers just recently. And along the way, I stopped in at some new businesses just to do some, networking, see if I could drum up any business. And there was a conversation I had with one of the shippers, and it was just along the same lines as that. Hey, I'm reaching out. I'm actually in the area. I live in the area, a couple blocks from you. I'm just seeing if there's any business opportunity out here. And we had a good conversation. I wasn't pushy, saying, hey, I need these lanes from you. Let me quote these lanes. This is what I'm going to do. It was more of, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm just getting into the business. Let me know what you're struggling with, and I'll figure it out for you if I can, right? And at the end of that conversation, I said, you're probably getting inundated with these calls every day, I'm sure. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, we get these calls 5, 6, 10 times a day. He's like, but you're one of the more pleasurable guys I've talked to, right? So, not, part of that, just not being pushy, I find anyways, that's what's been working. And just hearing them out on what their problems, what their issues are, instead of saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I can do. You want to really hear what they're dealing with, what they're struggling with, and then find a solution for that.
No, I'm right there with you, man. And I'm the same way, because I don't want to push anything on anybody, right? And so it's like we follow up, we're aggressive-ish, I call it, in the sense of like, we're there, we're present, but like, I'm not begging anybody for anything, right? And like, when I call I called somebody this morning, and they were, they're like, are you just trying to get set up? I'm like, possibly. I'm like, we specialize in open deck. I see you guys have X product out there. I'm just, are you guys actively moving that on a flatbed, or is everything in a dry van? Because there is a lot of cross-pollination that's in there. And then she's like, oh, actually, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to transfer you back right now. And again, it's just like, I need to develop business that fits inside of my current company structure and like what we can actually service. And I know how fragile it is to like, especially to like get stuff off the ground. I don't want to build something up on a lie. This is what we do. We do this really well. Does that kind of align with what you guys are actually doing right now? Right. Because I've just seen, as I'm doing research on companies and everything else, they might only produce the gasket, but they got like photos of large industrial equipment on their website and everything, but they just produce this one little gasket into it too, right? So it's like, I like to go in there and kind of take that approach, because like, ultimately, I'm just trying to make sure, do you actually move freight that aligns with what I'm trying to build here? Because if you just have small parcel shipping, that's not for me. If you just have LTL, not for me. Air freight, not for me. Full truckload, flatbed, especially, like, I'm your guy. And that's the stuff I want to go after, because that aligns and that fits inside of what I can actually execute upon inside of my business today.
Yeah. Yeah. And like myself being a new broker, I'm doing everything, right? I'm doing it all, but I'm finding now, a year into it, it is just that you want to do what's gonna, it's kind of in your wheelhouse. And, for me, getting the, seeing a little bit of it all, getting experience, knowing what's what is great for the time being. But it's definitely being honed into the expertise of what Colette and Ty have been doing for the last 18 years. So it's been a journey so far, and it's been enjoyable. I'm enjoying it.
How have you got, like, where did you start to feel like you were gaining some traction in building your book of business up there as a new rep? Because that's something that I probably see a lot out there in the social media world, is posts about like, hey, where do I start? How do I get going? What do I do? What do I say? And we've kind of already covered that, but like, when did you know, like, all right, this is the reality, this is how hard it's going to be? And then you just kind of like accepted that? Did you build up a framework where it's like, hey, I'm going to make 40 calls a day, 60 calls a day? Did you build a process for yourself to follow?
I had that process, to that. I was like, okay, I'm going to make 50 calls a day. And I was burning myself out doing that. And a lot of people do, and it only takes that one call to flip the switch, right? But it was my mom, Colette. She was saying like, hey, you know what? It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take some time to build it up. Some people, you might luck out, you might talk to the right person, you might have the right connection, and it does happen overnight, right? Yeah. Not the case for everyone, which is fine. But one of my bigger customers that I brought on in the beginning, it took a few months to even get a load out of them. But we were in communication of like, hey, this is what I do. They were working with another company. The sales rep was just, he had enough of like, there was no communication as to where their loads were. Mm-hmm. The customers that he was selling to wanted updates on their load. They had to go through 3 different people to get any updates on what was happening. And so the first couple of loads I did with them, he was just, ecstatic with the communication, the updates that they were getting. If he needed an update, he's emailing me at 9 at night. I was still replying to him at that time, right? It was, just the service that we provide. And over time now, they're a big company. They got warehouses in Canada, in the States. And, right away, I'm starting to get excited. Oh man, this could be a lot of freight. I want to get all of it. Yeah. And, I had conversations about, hey, this is what I would like to do. But again, it was like, we'll see what we can do. We'll see how it goes. Make sure everything's going smooth for a while. And then, that's been almost a year now. And we're getting to the point of, hey, you know what? I'm going to be having a conversation with our president of our company about you and what you've been doing for us and how much you've been helping me. And, getting you inside to our system so you can take on more of this freight for us and not only help myself, but they've got, hundreds of sales reps across the country, Canada and the US. So that's kind of when I realized like, okay, you know what? This is something that does take a little bit to build, right? You want to build up that relationship first, right? And show them, hey, this is how I'm going to take care of you. They see it firsthand, and I'm seeing the rewards coming back from that now, right? Yeah. In the beginning, like I said, I just wanted it all right away, and I probably wouldn't have been able to handle it. I would have figured a way to do it, but the slow build of building that relationship has been rewarding, and that's kind of how I've now realized, hey, this is what it takes to do this, right? It's not just overnight.
Yeah. And Mike Mikulik talks about that a bunch, about relationships. He was just in studio here in Phoenix a couple weeks back, and that's one thing that Mike and I, when we're chatting, it's always about is that relationship. But that, like, relationships take time, and you can't just force that into where all of a sudden you're just getting all of this business. I have found throughout my career, not every situation, but the majority of the time when you onboard with a new customer, and if they give you an abundance of business right away, there's a red flag that's there, right? Like, because ultimately, I don't know, it hasn't worked out long-term for me, but the ones that it takes a little bit of time, right? We're talking 6, 12 months of working with somebody, and then they're like, hey, listen, you're doing a really good job for us. Then I always feel like that's the time to go in there and then ask for more. Then you go in there and talk more about your other services. What are you actually able to do? I'm a firm believer that I will sell on one core competency, but if any existing customer comes to me with like a major need, I will figure it out. Right. Yeah. And I want to do that because I know that ultimately I don't want to get myself into a position with one of my customers because I took a risk that I knew I shouldn't have done, and then that costs me other business out there. But I've just known that over time, if you do focus on that relationship, and then as you're married, you have kids, relationships aren't easy. All right. Yeah. Relationships don't work if just Blair is winning all the time. As cool as that sounds for everybody, like, there's give and take. There's those tough conversations. It's answering those emails late at night. It's sending them updates. It's getting ahead of a lot of those things. But again, it'll ultimately always just boil down to communication. That is the one thing that I think you can never fail under any circumstances with any shipment that you're moving, is your ability to communicate.
Yeah. Communication and honesty, right? That's our core values, with our small team that we have is just like, our carriers are our customers too, right? And that's the biggest thing. They're representing us, and we always try to push that as much as possible. Hey, just communicate and just be honest with us, because that's how we're going to make it together.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man. And I feel like that's, that is one of the biggest oversights that I see out there in today's current market is those carrier relations and everything. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think a lot of people are going to be in and by a lot of people I mean brokers are going to be in a very tough spot here coming up, based on the way that they treat their drivers and everything else that goes on about there. And again, but ultimately though, I can only focus on me. I can only focus on my business, my outputs, and what I'm doing with my customers, because I got a business to run too. I got a business to grow, and it's easy to get caught up in a lot of those things. But again, like I feel like as long as you're out there focusing on, all right, how do I improve? How do I not make that mistake again? And then just go out there and kind of push it. I feel like that, like really, that's why it's like, it is easy to win out there, man. Because like, if you are honest, like that alone will win you, earn you 90% of the business out there, and then and I think it's just as important to let somebody know what you can't do in those situations as well, because I feel like that builds long-term credibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're in that position sometimes where we have to tell a customer, hey, we can't actually take this load for you, right? We did our best, we did what we could, but we have to let them know in a timely manner to say, hey, we can't do this. And again, that's where the communication comes with your carriers that you use, right? You want to have a good relationship with them, so they give you a good ample amount of heads up on those kinds of things. And we were chatting about this before we hopped on the show here too, right? I haven't seen it, but I've heard it from people that have been in the business a long time. Right? And you were just kind of alluding to that, right? The market might shift in the coming future, right? Right now, it's very easy as a broker to find trucks, and what I've been hearing is that's not always the case, right? When the market shifts, if you don't have those relationships with those carriers, well, it's going to be tough for some people to run their businesses, right, without any trucks.
Yeah, I'm actually, Blair, still waiting for the freight broker to come to me with a business plan where they can make money without drivers. It's kind of odd, but I'm waiting for that. And I just look at it as I want to be the broker of choice for trucking companies and shippers, right? Like that's ultimately what I want. I want both my carriers and my customers to flourish, because I feel like if you focus on that as a service provider, as an intermediary, you will ultimately win long term. And that's my main focus out there is how do I make it to where drivers love working with us? How do I make it to where our customers love working with us, that they will introduce us to people and scream our name from the mountaintop as well? And I feel like, if you remove the singular transaction from your mindset, and it's tough when you're getting things off the ground, when you don't have a lot of revenue coming in and you might not know how you're going to pay your bills in a couple of weeks. But if you focus on the long term with those relationships, and then you just remove that singular transaction from your mindset, because it might not be favorable for you in that moment. Focus on the long-term relationship. That's where you're going to see the most growth with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Well, Blair, I appreciate you, man. That was a quick 30 minutes. I love hearing about you coming in to this and really building up in a down market. Because, if you can develop a book of business, if you can grow over these last couple of years, you are going to be just fine when things flip, when things get a little bit more chaotic, because, frankly, people don't need to make a change. And why would anybody change if they don't need to? But if you're out there making a difference now, I can't wait to see you continue to grow out here in this industry, man. But Blair, how does anybody reach out to you? Maybe they just want to talk. Maybe they're like, hey man, I'm thinking about jumping out on my own here or doing that. How can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I got LinkedIn, Blair Charbonneau. There might be 2 or 3 other ones on there, but if they can see my face, there will be a similar picture there. My email, blairc@spi3pl.com. Yeah, reach out anytime. Happy to have a chat about, how I got into this industry. And, I think anyone that has that drive and ambition to do it can make it happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Blair, I appreciate it. That's going to be it for today, you guys. We got guests coming on tomorrow. And yeah, we're just going to continue to break it down every single day. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, which I know you do, and if you didn't and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Hold on. Now we got to end.